Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. I am your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. It has been a while since I've checked in, especially with the podcast, and I do apologize for that. It has just been a very busy summer. I think a lot of people can sympathize with that. I recently got back from a trip to Virginia to see my parents-in-law, my mother-in-law, father-in-law, an extended family. Introduce Riker, basically, to the extended family in Virginia, the Poindexter side of the family, Poindexter side of the family, and Mabe, and whatever. Her parents. And we just got back from Virginia, and Riker got to meet his great-grandparents, and it was absolutely wonderful. And I'm very happy to be back, and that's one reason why I've been gone for off the airwaves the past couple of weeks, but I'm back now, and it feels so good to be back in the saddle and doing the podcast again. I wanted to do a quick little housekeeping note here, and I kind of realized this right before I went on the air, right before I cracked the microphone. So, coming up here shortly towards the end of the month, my baby boy Riker, who I just mentioned, starts daycare. So for a few days out of the week, I will have a little bit more freedom to perhaps record maybe an extra podcast per week, record the radio show and record an extra podcast. I doubt I'm going to go back to the daily podcast routine. I did that for quite a while, and then I had a child. And anybody listening right now who's had a child knows how that goes. It's a miracle that I'm able to put out, on average, maybe one show per week, even though I was on hiatus for the past couple weeks. But yeah, so Riker starts daycare really soon here, and that's going to free up some time. Mostly, obviously, that's going to be museum stuff. My day job, I'm going to be at the Houston Museum of Natural Science, working and going around the city with my drone and cameras and filming really cool stuff and writing cool new videos. The emotional side of it is, yeah, baby boy is reaching that milestone where he is going to daycare, and it's going to be rough to send him off on his first day of daycare. Again, I know a lot of parents can sympathize with that, but it is going to offer up some free time, and I hope to do more podcasts during the week, at least one extra podcast during the week. I'm not promising that. I just hope that's the way it goes. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I did wanted to mention, when I went to Virginia, my boss made me promise, please don't work. When you go on vacation, disconnect. Don't check your emails. Don't take phone calls. It's really important for employees when they go on vacation to go on vacation. That's where you recharge. If you just keep working on vacation, you're going to come back and you're still going to be kind of running at 50%, and it's not going to benefit anybody. So when you go on vacation, you really need to disconnect. And I did that 99.9%. I did get some B-roll for a video I was working on for the museum that has since published, and maybe some of you listening right now have seen it. It is the ultimate solar-powered Game Boy Pocket video, and that has been picked up by several publications, and it's ongoing. Every day, more publications are picking it up and writing articles about it, which is great. It's kind of my first banger, so to speak, for the Houston Museum of Natural Science. The video is not viral. I wouldn't say the video is viral, but articles being written about the what I've modded, the Game Boy Pocket that I modded, are running rampant. A Reddit thread grabbed it, and it has several thousand upvotes and lots of comments. Gizmodo got it. Hackaday got it. I'm really hoping that Ars Technica picks up on it. But a lot of did The Verge? I'm not sure if The Verge picked it up yet. Maybe they did. I forget. A lot of publications have. People have been texting me like, dude, they wrote an article about your thing, which is awesome, and that's exactly what I wanted. But I filmed some B-roll for that while I was in Virginia. So there's some B-roll for that, and a lot of the thumbnails that these articles have taken to show off, the solar-powered Game Boy Pocket, are taken thumbnails from my mother and father-in-law's back porch, their back deck. So it's kind of always funny when I see, oh, a new article has been written, and what they used, the thumbnail for the article is, that's my mother and father-in-law's deck in Virginia. So, and that's all the work I did in Virginia. I didn't record any podcasts. I didn't record any radio shows. I didn't edit any video, but I did shoot some B-roll, some time lapse. It wasn't a lot of work. I just set the Game Boy out there. I set the camera out there in the shade and did a time lapse for 2 or 3 hours of basically the sun and the shadows moving across the ground to depict the passage of time and the sun moving over the solar panel of the Game Boy Pocket. But it felt good to get out there, get in Virginia. Virginia is just a gorgeous part of the country. I know a lot of Americans are listening right now, obviously. Appalachia, the Appalachian Mountains, are underrated. When we think about beautiful vistas in the United States, obviously, me included, we think about the northwest United States. So we think about Colorado and Wyoming and the Rocky Mountains and the Grand Tetons and all of that, but do not sell the Appalachian Mountain area short. South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, it is God's country out there. It is so gorgeous. Oh, I could talk about Virginia and that part of the country for hours. I won't right now. We'll move on to more geeky topics. I can't wait to talk about some more geeky topics coming up. You're listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. Every time I say mental curator, Johnny Hamburger, it reminds me, I gotta make t-shirts. I have to offer t-shirts on the website, and this is a good plug, geektherapyradio.com. The very first thing you see on there, I don't have any t-shirts yet. I'm not trying to sell you any t-shirts. I do have a little bit of merch, but it's been neglected. I hope it's all still being offered as like a mug and a beach towel and stickers. That's because I set up the merch store at the beginning of the pandemic when almost every manufacturing facility was not manufacturing, textiles and such. So it's limited in the merch store right now, but it does exist. The first thing you see when you go to geektherapyradio.com is a contact form. Again, it doesn't sign you up for any mailing list. It doesn't do anything other than it emails me directly. I get a ding on my phone. Do I have it set? I don't think I have email set up the ding on my phone, actually. But I do get emailed directly whatever you're writing to me, and it's really asking what's your geek thing, what's your comments about the show, if you just want to talk to me about whatever. It's just an email to me personally. So it doesn't sign you up for any mailing list. You don't get kind of promos for what's coming up on Geek Therapy Radio or anything like that. It's just it's a direct line to talk to me. So geektherapyradio.com is where you do that. You can also just email me, johnny@geektherapyradio.com. All the social media stuff, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Geek Therapy Radio. No matter what you're looking at, if you're listening to the radio right now and you want to grab the Geek Therapy Radio podcast, no matter what you're looking at, whether you're grabbing the podcast or you're looking at a social media feed or trying to find me on social media or trying to find me on YouTube, Geek Therapy Radio, and make sure it's the red, white, and black color scheme. If it says Geek Therapy Radio and it's the red, white, and black color scheme or any combination thereof, that's how you know you've got my flavor of Geek Therapy Radio. There isn't another Geek Therapy Radio to my knowledge. There's a Geek Therapy network podcast. I'm not sure if they're still doing podcasts. I hope they are. It was really good. Their color scheme was green and yellow or something like that. I am not affiliated with that. Anyways, Geek Therapy Radio, look for red, white, and black color scheme no matter what you're searching, podcast or social media or YouTube, and that's how you know you've got my brand of Geek Therapy Radio. All right, so new development today, actually, as I'm recording this, the day I'm recording this, is I finally pulled the trigger on an e-bike. I have been wanting a bike for a long time. I've been wanting an e-bike. One of the very first sponsors, not to get too sidetracked here, I'll talk about my e-bike here in a second. But when I first started Geek Therapy Radio, I was assigned a young, hungry Green Gill account executive. What would you call it? He worked in sales. And we went out and we signed a contract with a sporting goods store who sold electric bikes, and I was hired, and I was going to be the spokesperson to help them sell electric bikes. Well, we signed that contract, and then within a few days, Harvey happened, and I think their store got flooded. I never heard from them again. It's just kind of ironic that I was supposed to, one of my first sponsors was going to be to sell e-bikes, and I was all about that because it falls right in line with what Geek Therapy Radio is all about. E-bikes are very geeky, and they're people are passionate about biking. They're passionate about EVs and all that kind of stuff. It was perfect for Geek Therapy Radio. But anyways, unfortunately, Harvey happened. So anyways, fast forward. I have no affiliation with this business, whatever. I ordered my e-bike off of Amazon, truth be told. And the model of e-bike that I ordered was the EcoTrick Seagull. It's got a 1,000-watt brushless hub motor, 7-speed Shimano gears. Cost X amount of dollars. I think it was kind of a mid-range price. I'll just say... I will just mention the price here because if anybody's reading this and looking it up and listening to this, are you reading this? If you look this up, you'll see the price. It fluctuates around $1,200, which is very, I think, average for e-bikes. Those of you who know mountain bikes and e-bikes and that whole world, you know that $1,200 for a good bicycle, e-bike or not, is almost nothing. You can spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on a non-electric bike easily. So I feel it was pretty fair, and I've only had it for a day. I've only been able to spend maybe 30 minutes on it total today after it came 95% complete. I had to put it together for about an hour, but I went ripping around on it, and I haven't even lifted the limiter on it yet. I haven't even gone into the LCD display to up the speed yet. It still tops out about 21 miles an hour. It's like 20.4, 21. It kind of fluctuates between there. It's an awesome bike. And I'm not trying to sell it. If you listen to the podcast and you go to the description, there's no freaking affiliate code in there. Amazon's not going to give me a dime. EcoTrick's not going to give me a dime. I'm just telling you that I finally got an e-bike, and it's great. I put 5 miles on it. Like I said, I haven't spent more than maybe 30 minutes on it today. I already put 5 miles on it. And I'm already thinking, what kind of errands can I run? What's close enough by that makes this kind of feasible to use instead of driving. And I know a lot of you listening know that I do have a electric vehicle, a car, a Chevy Bolt with a B. But the bike is a lot more fun. It's more exercise. It's kind of a misnomer that, electric bikes, you're never going to get exercise, so what's the point? No, you still sweat on it. Even if you're doing just 100% electric mode, just twisting the throttle, you're still sweating on it. You're still moving around. And especially when you're pedaling with it, even with pedal assist, you're still going to work up a sweat. And if the battery dies, you are definitely going to work up a sweat because it's 100% pedal power. It reminds me of kind of like the 21st century version of an old school 1980s, 1970s moped, like the bicycles that had a single stroke motor on that. And I remember vividly a lady down the street, her name was Blanche, and she had 2 kids, Mark and Brian, and they were my older brother's friends. And Blanche had a white, like 1960 something Stingray Corvette, and that was neat. But what was cooler to me is every time I would drive by, I would see that when the garage was open, that white Stingray Corvette. But what piqued my mind mostly back then was that bike that had a motor in it. That bike that had an engine. Sorry, I need to be more specific for anybody pedantic out there. It had an engine in it, a combustion engine in it, because motor technically means, electric motor, and it has a stator and everything like that. Okay, anyways, geeking out a little bit. But it was like a yellow and white moped. It was just a cruiser, like a beach cruiser bicycle. I don't even know. Yeah, it had multiple gears. I seem to remember having multiple gears, but it had a gasoline engine on it. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. And remember, I was a little kid back in the 80s, mid to late 80s, when I would see this thing, and I had kind of recently learned how to ride a bike. This was when I grew up in San Antonio. I recently learned how to ride a bike, and we lived on top of this hill in San Antonio. San Antonio is technically out kind of towards the hill country of Texas. And I just remember thinking how convenient and how awesome and how far I could go and how easy it would be to get up hills if I just had that that bicycle with the engine on it, and I would ask about it every once in a while. I go over there and knock on the door and say, "Miss Blanche, can I play Nintendo?" Because her kids had Nintendo games that we weren't allowed to have. So we play Nintendo, and I would ask every time, "What can we ride that bike?" And she's always like, "It doesn't work. I don't know. It doesn't work. It's broken," or something like that. And I was just always so bummed. It bummed me out so much. Every time I asked, I was kind of hoping for it to be Christmas Day and it would be working. This thing was collecting dust and cobwebs and probably hadn't been run in 10 years, and that was like the mid-1980s. It hadn't been run since the 70s. I would say it was a bike from the 1970s with an engine on it from the same time period, and it intrigued me to no end. So fast forward to the 21st century, August 2021, I've got an electric bike that operates in much the same way. You can pedal all you want, but if you want to use the electric motor on it, all you got to do is twist the throttle or activate the pedal assist mode, and it's kind of like a 1980s, 1970s moped bicycle single stroke engine, but in 21st century with a 1,000-watt motor. How cool is that? I'm so stoked that I finally have an electric bike, and I got a trailer too, like a one single seat child trailer for Riker to ride with me. Now we gotta get my wife a bicycle. She says she doesn't want an e-bike because it's cheating. She might change her mind. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Visit geektherapyradio.com to contact me and for more information. And I have to reiterate, when you contact me, it is not some sort of newsletter sign up or any sort of thing like that. It's just a direct email to me. Anyways, on to more Geek Therapy Radio. One of the things, and I don't know how I should kind of put this, I need to talk to the higher-ups at iHeart about this. To let you behind the curtain a little bit, if you're listening to this on the radio on Saturday or Sunday or whenever, I have a deadline to get the show in each week to KPRC 950 AM for upload into the system by 8 a.m. Thursday morning, which usually means that I record Wednesday nights. And that it's kind of a strain, honestly. I'm happy to do it. I'm not complaining at all. But it's kind of a little bit of a strain because I like to talk about things sometimes that are kind of topical, that are newsworthy or headlines. And usually what I'd like to do is get it in by like the end of the day Friday. That way I have the entire week for things to develop and things to happen, so that when I record on Friday, it's kind of, by the time you listen to it on the weekend, I can kind of go over the entire week and the news of the week and the geek news of the week and gaming and robots and science and Elon Musk and all that kind of stuff. But when I have to get it in, when I have to record by Wednesday night, it's kind of like, well, there's a whole nother half of the week that I could be missing. So anyways, that I won't be able to, wouldn't be in the Saturday show. So when you listen on the air and this happened like 3 or 4 days ago, Johnny, why are you just talking about it now on a Saturday? Well, it's just the way it's the way the cookie crumbles right now. I've got to get the show in by 8 a.m. Thursday morning, which means there's a whole lot of week left after I record the show for a lot of things to happen. Anyways, again, I'm not complaining about that. That's why most of these shows for the past, probably, I'd say, a year or so. When did I leave iHeart 9 to 5 as my 9 to 5 job? January, I think. Since January, I believe. I haven't really... All these shows have been pretty much evergreen shows. Evergreen meaning that the stuff I talk about is fairly general. Sometimes I talk about things that are kind of time specific, but generally these shows have been evergreen because I haven't been talking a whole lot, to my knowledge, about really topical, timely things. Got to get the show on Thursday morning by 8 a.m. Topical things happen between Thursday and Saturday. So anyways, I've got I was about to say iPad. I mean, that just tells you how much mental market share Apple has. No, I've got my Samsung Galaxy Tab S6 right here. And the reason I'm being specific about the model is for geek reasons. You're listening to Geek Therapy Radio. Also, I have So many tabs open in Chrome here. So many tabs. I don't close tabs. Like I'll find stories and I'll open a tab and then I'll get back to it later. I think, oh, that might be fun to talk about on the show, and I think I'm going to get back to it later. You know what's going to be fun? Let's go through the open tabs I have here of things that go back for months to see what I was theoretically going to talk about on the show. Let's go back. Oh my gosh, I'm swiping so much. No, this was not for Geek Therapy Radio. I was looking at computer cases, Silverstone. Yeah, actually, I can mention that. Silverstone makes good PC cases and PC components, like fans and heat. What am I looking for? Air coolers and such like that. I'm not pimping or promoting Silverstone, but I did move my PC guts, the Ryzen build. I moved it out of my monolithic large ATX case into a rack, into a Silverstone. I think it's, what is it? Oh gosh, what is the model number of it? I forget off the top of my head. 09? It's something 09, HE09, something like that. But and I got the rack mount ears for it, so I could put it in a rack in my new desk. Oh, I got a new desk in my studio, my completely solar powered studio. So the desk I have has rack ears for storing all sorts of audio gear and whatever kind of gear. So I got ears for this computer case, Silverstone computer case, and now it's racked up in the top rack on the left side, by my left knee. So that was what this tab was, and I had to order a new air cooler for it, a Noctua C14S, 140 millimeter C-type quiet CPU cooler for my Ryzen 9 3900X. That's that tab. I spent way too much time on that, but I moved my PC guts into a new case and I rack mounted it. That's all you need to know about that. Oh, how long ago did I open this tab? This is about Tesla. It's on Electrek. About Tesla disclosing their design influences in their patent for the Cybertruck. And I thought for sure, here's the interesting thing about that. It's probably a good thing that I opened up these tabs to go over. So Tesla disclosing, I'll just read the title of this article from Electrek. Tesla discloses Cybertruck design influences in fascinating new patent. I looked through this patent, and for sure I thought I would see the DeLorean, which I'll get into in a second. But the designs that they quote in this patent are November 1979, Carabetta, 1985, the Bird et al. 1990, Clinet, the May 1990 Falero, not Fiero, Falero. These are like concept stuff. May 2000, Gaetan. October 2000, Gaetan. July 21st, Gaetan or Gaetan, however you're going to pronounce that. Nowhere in this do they cite the DeLorean as one of the design concepts or inspirations for the Cybertruck. That is hilarious. That is shocking that they're not quoting the DeLorean as a design. Look at the freaking Cybertruck. It's a stainless steel, everything, even the fenders and the fascia and all that kind of stuff. It's DeLorean. The actual colors of the lights and everything and style of it all is DeLorean. It's wedge shape, it's DeLorean, it's stainless steel, it's got the exact same color fascia. I did a YouTube video about this back after they announced the Cybertruck, about all the design influences and comparing it to the DeLorean. But here's the thing, and maybe some of you listening who are more in tune with car culture kind of are picking up on this. I know exactly why they didn't quote or disclose DeLorean as a design inspiration in this patent. It's because, for lack of a better word, DeLorean quote unquote still exists in some capacity today. It is not related to the original DeLorean Motor Company, but the DeLorean Motor Company quote unquote still operates out of Humble, Texas, and has facilities around the globe. I have a feeling that Tesla didn't want to mess with paying out DeLorean, the current DeLorean Motor Company. They didn't want to mess with any of that stuff. Or maybe it could be that the DeLorean Motor Company is not around anymore. Maybe these other companies, these other inventors, Carabetta, Bird, Clinet, Falero, maybe they still exist in some capacity and they do have to kind of pay them out something. But Maybe they didn't have to name DeLorean because the original DeLorean company doesn't exist, or they didn't name it because they don't want to pay royalties to the current DeLorean Motor Company. And they just didn't probably, I'm guessing here, maybe they didn't want to get into that argument anyways. Maybe they would win that case. Maybe Tesla and Elon Musk would win the argument that, well, yes, DeLorean Motor Company, 2021 DeLorean Motor Company, but you didn't design the car that you're refurbishing and repairing and selling, quote, new models of new VIN numbers. You didn't design it, so they didn't have to name you in the past. Maybe they just wanted to avoid all that discussion, so they just didn't name it. But you can clearly see that the DeLorean DMC-12 was a major design inspiration for the Cybertruck. Elon Musk has a DeLorean. It's a Back to the Future DeLorean. But there you go. The next tab, and maybe I'm going to finish out the show like this because we got a few more minutes here in the third segment. The next tab over was an article from Windows Central titled, "Why You Shouldn't Install Windows on a Steam Deck." Why you shouldn't install Windows on the Steam Deck. And I think the author, Richard Devine, I think that's kind of a clickbait title. It's an interesting read. So I won't call it entire clickbait, but that title is grabby because I guarantee you maybe a lot of whoever's going to buy the Valve Steam Deck is going to want to put Windows on it. I'm not going to go into the history of Gabin and Valve and their vendetta against Windows and all that kind of stuff, but Windows does not ship on the Steam Deck. You can install Windows. Basically, the Steam Deck sits on an operating system based on Linux, and it does not come with Windows. However, you can install Windows on the Steam Deck. And this author is saying, he's making an argument on why you shouldn't install Windows on a Steam Deck. Blah, 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 blah. He goes all the way through it. What he never mentions, though, what this author of the article never mentions, though, is that there's a huge contingency of users who want to run emulators. And the best operating system, arguably, and most likely, winnably, arguably, is Windows. There's no PS2 emulator natively for Mac OS. I know for sure, not that you could install Mac OS on the Steam Deck. Linux is hit and miss with getting drivers going. You can do RetroPie and you can do RetroArch and all that kind of stuff. But the most stable platform for running emulators is Windows. So a lot of people are going to buy the Steam Deck and put Windows on it. It's a cheap handheld gaming PC with powerful hardware. Shouldn't install Windows on a Steam Deck. Okay. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. And at the end of the last segment, I said that the Steam Deck is a cheap, quote-unquote, handheld Windows gaming PC. It's not even a Windows gaming PC. It's a cheap handheld gaming PC. That's not true. The base model, I believe, starts at $399. That is not something that I would honestly recommend the base model to most people. I haven't played it yet, obviously. I haven't played it yet. But I would go mid-tier up. The reason being, and it's the same reason I've argued other devices that start, like the Windows Surface Go or whatever, that the base model has a very attractive price, but it's running on a very teeny tiny amount of built-in storage, and that built-in storage is like 128 gigabytes or 64 gigabytes, and it's running on eMMC storage, eMMC solid-state storage, which is not the fastest. eMMC is, it's fast, but it's not, you are not even approaching SSD speeds, traditional SATA SSD speeds, let alone NVMe speeds. So I would go mid-tier on the Steam Deck if I was to purchase one, and I might. I'm tempted. I would go mid-tier at least so you get that NVMe storage. But the next tab over from that, don't install Windows, why you shouldn't install Windows on a Steam Deck. The next tab over I have on here is from Tom's Hardware, and it says, look out, Steam Deck. Competitor offers 5 GHz CPU, 1 TB SSD. That competitor, by the way, and I've talked about their devices several times on Geek Therapy Radio over the years because I have a couple of their devices and I really like what they make. GPD. The GPD Win Max 2021, that's the name of it. GPD Win Max 2021 lets you choose now. It's not out yet. It's going to let you choose between an Intel or AMD APU. So the interesting thing about that is, yes, it's going to be more expensive than the Steam Deck. There's no doubter. I don't see a price. I'm kind of scrolling here. I don't see a price. I believe it was kind of around $700. Yeah, exactly. It was for $699, $799, and then it's going to be around $937 when it launches. Maybe it's going to be even more expensive than that. Around $1,000. It's going to be more expensive than the Steam Deck. This GPD Win Max 2021 is going to be more expensive than the Steam Deck, but it has a much bigger screen than maybe much bigger isn't the best word for it. Oh, and it comes out, it's going to be up to $1,250. Anyways, all I'm getting at here is it has a nice big screen. It's like a netbook style device, but it has built-in physical Xbox style controls, much like the GPD Win, the first version that I have behind me here. Or where is it? Is it behind me? Yeah, it's behind me. Plug it in. It's charging off the solar battery. It's got a 5-inch screen in that first generation GPD Win. I'm trying to look up the screen size. Where is the freaking screen size? I want to say it's 8 inches. Yeah, 8-inch screen, 1280 by 800, which for 8-inch screen is perfect. That's 3 more inches diagonally than the first generation GPD Win. That's a usable screen for netbook style computing. But the fact that it has built-in Xbox controls, just like the first generation GPD Win and the second generation GPD Win for that matter, makes it a very enticing offer. I would say between the Steam Deck and the GPD Win Max 2021, there are 2 very different form factors. So the Steam Deck is just like a Nintendo Switch. It is a landscape gaming device, kind of like the first Nintendo Advance, the PSP, Nintendo Switch, like I just mentioned. Whereas the GPD Win Max 2021 is a clamshell design. It's basically a netbook-sized device with not a full-size keyboard, but a full QWERTY keyboard on there. And if I was spending money on a device like this, I would absolutely 150,000% go with the GPD Win Max 2021 over the Steam Deck. I'm not saying the Steam Deck is bad. The Steam Deck actually, by all accounts, looks amazing and has awesome hardware in it. But I like that the GPD Win Max 2021 is in a more usable form factor, just to toss in a backpack real quick. Have a decent processor in it, depending on kind of your needs. If I was going to buy this thing for kind of productivity and running lower end games or running games at lower resolution, lower frame rate, I would go the AMD. That sounds counterintuitive because I'm all about Team AMD right now. But if I was going to do productivity and not so much gaming, I would go with the AMD APU in the GPD Win Max 2021. If I was going to do more gaming, I would go for the Intel CPU in here. And I'll tell you why in a second, because it's going to use the Core i7-1195G7 that boosts to 5 gigahertz, and the built-in graphics on these Intel chips, the G graphics, I guess, XE graphics. In this particular device, in the GPD Win Max 2021, the Intel processor with its 4 cores and 8 threads has more graphics horsepower and a higher clock speed, which helps in gaming. And according to GPD, they have their kind of the chart here showing the frame rates, and I will give between the 2 CPU choices. So for instance, Flight Simulator 2020 with the i7, it would be, this is ridiculous. It claims, It claims average frame rate of 66 frames per second with the Intel CPU versus 26 frames per second with the 4800U AMD. Here's why that's ridiculous. That little number is ridiculous. And even though I have downloaded the latest update for Microsoft Flight Simulator, I haven't tested everything here yet. But so I gotta say this with a grain of salt because I haven't tested it yet. But even with my Ryzen 9 3900X and friggin' RTX 3090, it is almost impossible to get 60 frames per second out of Flight Simulator 2020. So the fact that this chart was released way before the update to Flight Simulator 2020 to boot, and it says average frames per second, 66 frames per second, and then with the Intel, and then 26 frames per second with the AMD 4800U. Okay, what resolution scaling? Like, are you on maximum low, like lowest possible, or lowest possible resolution? I have no idea. They don't say what settings they use to test these numbers. But the point is, if you go through this entire list here, okay, Call of Duty Warzone with the Intel at 66 frames a second, with the AMD it's 37 frames per second. Where do we go here? Death Stranding, 57 frames per second with the Intel, 30 frames per second with the AMD. So the AMD, I would wager, is better for productivity. Then again, how much productivity are you going to be really doing on an 8-inch screen? I mean, you could, but how much are you actually going to do? Yeah. So the 4800U has 8 cores and 16 threads in Radeon Vega graphics. 8 core, 16 threads versus Intel's 4 core and 8 thread processor with the Z graphics. And yeah, 8 physical cores and 16 threads is going to be better for productivity. But for a device like this with a small screen, 8-inch screen, I would kind of lean more towards gaming and do the Intel 4 core 8 thread Tiger Lake with the Iris Z graphics. But the Steam Deck is a good value proposition. But you know what? I still think if I was spending money on either of these devices, one or the other, I would go with the GPD. GPD Win Max 2021. What is the one more tab? Oh, okay, one more tab before we close out the show here. The first South Park game was coming to the Game Boy Color, but Matt and Trey pulled out at the last second because of the Game Boy Color back then was kind of more towards a youthful audience, and they didn't think it'd be fit right. So the interesting story here is that the first South Park game was going to come out for the Game Boy Color. It got pulled, and they retrofitted the code to make it a Mary-Kate and Ashley game. From South Park to Mary-Kate and Ashley. That's a fun origin story of the first South Park video game. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love, and you're worthy of receiving love. And you're also worthy of your own self-respect. Embrace your geek thing. Lean into your geek thing. Know that you are not alone. Know that you are loved. And I'll talk to y'all next week. If you'd like to sponsor Geek Therapy Radio, just go to geektherapyradio.com and let's talk.